Welcome to the Luxury Retail Market Podcast.
It's great to be here.
I want you to just picture the scene for a moment. It's early January 2026.
Okay.
You're walking down Fifth Avenue in New York. The air is crisp. Tourists are all bundled up. And you stop. You stop right in front of that massive, iconic limestone building, Saks Fifth Avenue.
I can see it. The flags are flying.
The flags are flying. The windows are dressed with the latest collections. From the sidewalk, I mean, it looks completely like business as usual.
Right. It looks like the absolute pinnacle of American luxury.
But if you could look through those walls, through the limestone and into the boardroom, or, let's be honest, into the law offices nearby where they're drafting these filings, you would see a completely different picture.
Oh, completely. You'd see a house on fire.
House on fire, exactly right. Because on January 14th, that illusion, it just finally shattered.
It did.
The parent company of Saks Fifth Avenue, Neiman Marcus, and Bergdorf Goodman filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy.
The Holy Trinity. I mean, that's what everyone called them. The Holy Trinity of American department stores. All under one roof. And that roof it effectively collapsed.
It did. And the dust, I mean, it is still settling, but the shockwaves are being felt from Manhattan to Beverly Hills to, all the way to Paris.
The whole luxury retail world is reeling.
Absolutely. We've seen retail experts, financial analysts, real estate pros just posting nonstop since the announcement. My LinkedIn feed is basically a digital wake right now.
Mine too. And, for those of us who have really been following the industry, the writing has been on the wall for a while.
For a long time.
But still, the reality of it, seeing it happen, is stark. This isn't just a company restructuring its debt. It feels different.
It feels like the potential closing chapter of an entire era of American retail.
It really does.
So our mission today, I think, is to cut through that noise. We're not just going to read the headlines. We want to do a proper autopsy. We need to understand the financial unraveling, the why behind this collapse. But, we're strategy experts, so we can't just sit here and admire the problem.
No, we have to pivot to a solution. We need to construct a roadmap.
Exactly. Practical strategy and implementation plan for the future.
Because the doors are still open, despite everything.
They are. But before we can fix it, we have to understand exactly where we are right now. So let's look at the current state of affairs. January 2026.
Okay.
Saks Global has commenced voluntary Chapter 11 proceedings. It's in the Southern District of Texas. Now, usually when people hear bankruptcy, they think going out of business signs, liquidation sales. Is that what's happening here?
Not immediately, and that's a really crucial distinction for you to understand. Filing for Chapter 11 is a shield. It's not a death sentence, at least not yet.
A shield?
Yeah, it gives them breathing room from their creditors. And to do that, they've secured a financing commitment of roughly $1.75 billion.
Okay, $1.75 billion. That's a huge number. Let's unpack that. Where is that money coming from?
Well, most of it, about $1.5 billion, is coming from existing bondholders.
So the people they owe money to are giving them more money.
In a way, yes. They're trying to protect their initial investment. And then there's another $240 million in what's called incremental liquidity. This is debtor in possession financing, or DIP financing.
And its only purpose is what? Just to keep the lights on?
Basically. Pay salaries, keep the heat on, run the website, just keep the operations running.
So if I walk into the Saks flagship today, or maybe Neiman's in Dallas,
Yep.
The doors are actually unlocked.
Yes. Operations across all the banners, Saks, Neiman Marcus, Bergdorf Goodman, they all remain open. The e-commerce sites are running. You can still go in and buy a pair of shoes.
I sense a massive but coming.
It's a massive but, because the customer experience inside those stores is telling a much, much different story than the press releases are.
Right, because you can have the electricity on, but if you don't have the product, you don't really have a store.
Precisely.
So we need to talk about this unraveling strategy that led them here. They're struggling with over $2.5 billion in debt.
Billion. With a B.
And a lot of that seems, frankly, self-inflicted from the merger.
A huge portion was incurred from that acquisition of their rival, Neiman Marcus, back in late 2024. The deal was for $2.65 billion.
I remember the headlines. Everyone was billing it as the ultimate power move.
Oh, yeah. Create a luxury giant. Consolidate the market.
Take on the world.
It was billed as this consolidation play to compete with the global heavyweights. But instead of creating a superpower, it created this debt-laden behemoth.
So they essentially bought a rival they couldn't afford.
Using debt they couldn't possibly service. I mean, the math just never added up.
And the vendors, the brands themselves, the ones that actually make the luxury goods, they're not stupid.
Not at all. They saw this coming a mile away.
So what do they do?
Well, this is where the current state gets really, really messy. We're in the middle of a massive vendor relations crisis.
Okay.
In the months leading up to the filing, major vendors just stopped shipping product.
They just turned off the tap.
Burned it off. Or they started demanding cash in advance.
See, rough. So imagine telling Chanel, hey, send us the latest shipment of bags. We'll pay you later. And Chanel just laughing and hanging up the phone.
That is effectively what happened. And the numbers, when you look at the creditor list in the bankruptcy filing, they are just eye-watering.
Give me an example.
Chanel is owed $136 million.
$136 million to one brand. That is an astronomical amount of inventory.
It's insane. Then you have Kering. That's the parent company of Gucci, Balenciaga, Saint Laurent. They're owed $60 million.
60.
LVMH is owed $26 million.
So when you owe the three biggest luxury conglomerates in the world that kind of money, the tap runs dry very, very fast.
It does. And we saw the impact of that during the most critical time of the year, the holiday 2025 season.
Of course.
We heard all these reports of empty shelves, a total failure to stock key merchandise. And you simply cannot be a luxury retailer if you cannot provide luxury product. It's the most basic part of the deal.
It's the empty shelf phenomenon. I mean, it kills consumer confidence faster than literally anything else.
Absolutely.
If I go to Saks to buy a specific Gucci bag and it's not there because Saks didn't pay its bill, I'm not coming back. I'm just going to walk down the street to the Gucci store.
Exactly. And once that consumer habit breaks, it is incredibly hard, maybe impossible to fix.
So you have this financial chaos, you have empty shelves, and amidst all this, the leadership suite has been, well, let's call it a revolving door.
A revolving door is putting it mildly. It's been a bit of a soap opera.
Okay, so walk me through the timeline. Let's start with Mark Metrick. He was a longtime Saks veteran.
Right. He resigned on January 2nd, 2026, just before the filing. And his parting sentiment was incredibly telling. He said, "This is a hard business even when times are good."
Which is a very polite corporate way of saying, these times are impossible and I'm out.
Precisely. So Metrick leaves. Then Richard Baker, he's the executive chairman, the guy behind the whole thing. He steps up as CEO immediately.
Okay, so Baker takes the reins.
But that only lasts for about 10 days, maybe 11. By mid-January, right around the filing, he steps down to make way for the new leadership that the bondholders have appointed.
And this is where we need to introduce the new protagonist in this whole drama.
Yes. Enter Geoffroy van Raemdonck.
And for our listeners, we need to be very, very specific about that name. It looks like Geoffrey, like the giraffe from Toys R Us.
Right, but it's not. The pronunciation is distinct. It's pronounced Geoffroy.
Geoffroy. Okay. I want to make sure I get that right for the rest of our deep dive. Geoffroy. So Geoffroy is now the CEO. Who is he and why on earth did they pick him?
Well, it's a fascinating, almost ironic choice because Geoffroy is the former CEO of Neiman Marcus Group.
The company they just bought.
Yes. He's the man who steered Neiman Marcus through its own bankruptcy back in 2020. And, to top it all off, he was instrumental in selling Neiman Marcus to Saks in 2024.
Wait, hold on a second. Let me get this straight. He ran Neiman, navigated its bankruptcy, sold Neiman to Saks.
Yep.
Saks goes bankrupt largely because it bought Neiman.
Right.
And now he's back to run the combined bankrupt company.
That is the circular nature of high finance retail.
Yeah.
It's almost poetic in a tragic, sort of Shakespearean way.
That's incredible. So what's his mandate now?
His mandate is clear. He's appointed CEO, effective immediately, to lead this massive transformation, and he's bringing his own team with him.
Oh, interesting.
He's brought in Darcy Pennick as President and Chief Commercial Officer, and Lana Todorovich as Chief of Global Brand Partnerships. They were his people at Neiman's.
So it's essentially a Neiman Marcus management team taking over the combined Saks global entity.
It is. The acquired company is now running the acquirer, all under the umbrella of a bankruptcy filing.
The plot thickens.
Okay, let's unpack this even further, because you really can't tell the story of this collapse without talking about the architect of the whole thing, Richard Baker.
No, you can't.
There is so much speculation floating around, and the central question seems to be, is Richard Baker responsible for the destruction of Saks Global?
It is the question. And to answer it, I think you have to look at Richard Baker's identity. Who he is.
And who is he?
He is not a merchant. He is not a fashion person. He didn't grow up on the sales floor pinning hems or checking inventory logs. He is a real estate tycoon.
Right. His background is property.
It's all property. His father founded National Realty and Development Corp. His entire lens on the world, his whole way of thinking is about property, not product.
And when you look at his career, there seems to be a very clear pattern, a specific algorithm, you could say.
We call it the four-act play,
Oh.
and it repeats with almost mechanical precision. If you look at his history, his track record, you can see the steps so clearly.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Walk us through this play. Act 1. Act 1. Buy a retailer. But, and this is the key, you don't buy it because you believe in the brand or the merchandise. You buy it because it sits in incredibly valuable real estate. You're buying the dirt, not the shirt.
The dirt, not the shirt. I like that. Okay, so that's Act 1. What's Act 2?
Act 2 is what we call the separation. You sell the flagship buildings, or you spin off all the property assets into a completely separate company, a REIT or something similar.
So you're financially engineering it. You're separating the valuable real estate from the less valuable operating company.
You're separating the dirt from the shirt. Exactly. So now the retail company, the store, doesn't even own its own home anymore.
And it has to pay rent.
Not only does it have to pay rent, it often has to pay an inflated rent back to the real estate entity you now control, or to whoever you sold the building to.
So you're draining cash from the store to pay the landlord, who just happens to be you, in a way.
In a roundabout way, yes.
Yeah.
It's a way to pull cash out of the operating business. Which brings us to Act 3, the debt load.
Yeah.
You load the operating company, the part that sells the shirts, with an enormous amount of debt. Often, this debt is used to pay for the acquisition itself, or to pay out special dividends to the shareholders, like yourself.
So now the store is being squeezed from both sides. It's paying high rent, and it's paying high interest payments on all this new debt.
Precisely. It's being bled dry. And that inevitably leads to Act 4. Extract value while the retailer enters a death spiral.
The death spiral, that sounds ominous.
It is. The retailer can't afford to renovate stores or invest in technology because all its cash is going to rent and debt service.
Wow.
Then it can't afford to buy new inventory. The shelves go empty.
Customers stop coming.
Revenue plummets. And eventually, bankruptcy or liquidation. The cycle is complete.
It sounds incredibly cynical, but do we have concrete evidence of this pattern elsewhere? Is this just a theory we're applying?
Unfortunately, no. The graveyard of retail is full of evidence. Look at Lord & Taylor.
Okay.
Baker bought it in 2006. The iconic flagship building on Fifth Avenue, sold. The chain, eventually liquidated, gone. Look at Hudson's Bay in Canada, the oldest company in North America. Liquidated in 2025 after a 355-year run.
355 years? That's older than the United States.
Gone. Zellers in Canada. He sold the lease agreements to Target, which was a disaster for Target, and Zellers vanished. Galeria Kaufhof in Germany bought it, sold it for a profit, and it failed later. The pattern is just. It's incredibly consistent.
So the business model wasn't actually selling clothes.
Never. The business model was betting on the arbitrage between the company's public valuation and the underlying value of its real estate. It's financial arbitrage masquerading as retail.
And we saw this playbook run at Saks Global in real time, didn't we?
We did. Just before the collapse, they made a move that was purely about desperation, just trying to keep the lights on for one more month.
What was that?
They sold the land beneath the Neiman Marcus flagship store in Beverly Hills.
That has to be one of the most prime pieces of real estate in the world. Rodeo Drive.
One of the most valuable commercial corners on the planet. And they sold it to a distressed asset specialist for about $100 million.
And what do they do with that $100 million? Did they invest it in a new mobile app? Did they use it to pay Chanel what they were owed?
No, they used it to make an interest payment on their debt.
That is just, it's heartbreaking. You're selling the crown jewels just to pay the vig to the loan sharks.
It is asset stripping in its purest, most desperate form.
And we can't forget the other big piece of this puzzle, the Amazon component.
Oh, yeah.
I remember the headlines. Amazon invests in Saks, a new strategic partnership. Everyone thought this was the savior.
Of course. Amazon was going to bring the tech prowess, the logistics, the digital eyeballs, and Saks was going to bring the luxury curation.
So what happened?
Well, that partnership is now officially considered presumptively worthless
Ugh.
by Amazon itself.
Worth?
That's the word from their filings. Saks is in the process of winding down the Saks on Amazon's storefront. Amazon's claims that Saks breached the deal and just burned through the cash without delivering any meaningful results.
So it was a Hail Mary pass that was intercepted at the goal line.
Completely. The real estate play failed. The tech partnership failed. Which brings us to a much broader topic because, even without Richard Baker and his algorithm, the department store model itself was in serious trouble.
That's a great point. We have to zoom out and talk about the evolution of luxury department stores.
We do, because we have to acknowledge the seismic shift that's happened in the industry. For generations, Saks and Neiman Marcus, they literally defined luxury for Americans.
Absolutely. You think about the Neiman's Christmas book with the fantasy gifts.
Right, his and hers airplanes, or you think about Bergdorf selling fur coats to John Lennon and Yoko Ono. They weren't just stores. They were the cultural gatekeepers of luxury.
If you were a hot young designer in, say, 1985, you had to be in Saks. There was no other way to reach that wealthy, discerning customer.
It was your only path. But then came the internet. And then, maybe more importantly, came the brands opening their own stores. The shift to vertical integration is the real killer here.
Vertical integration. Okay, break that down. That means the brand owns everything from the factory to the retail store.
Exactly. And I want to cite a really important report here. It has a fantastic title. Does LVMH own Beverly Hills?
That is a great title. Who wrote that?
That was written by Robert Gutierrez. He's a researcher and strategist here at Luxury Retail Market. And his thesis is absolutely critical to understanding this moment.
Okay, so what's the core of what Gutierrez is saying?
The insight is that these luxury conglomerates, LVMH, Kering, Richemont, they moved to vertical integration specifically to take back control from the department stores.
Control over what?
Control over pricing and brand image. Think about it. If I'm Gucci and I sell a handbag wholesale to Saks for $1,000, Saks then marks it up and sells it for $2,000. Saks keeps that $1,000 margin. And even worse, if that bag doesn't sell at full price, what does Saks do at the end of the season?
It goes on the sale rack, 30% off.
Exactly. It gets discounted. And that damages the Gucci brand. Gucci does not want its iconic bag sitting on a messy sale rack next to a heavily discounted sweater from a brand nobody's ever heard of. It erodes the perception of luxury.
So LVMH and Kering said, forget this, we'll just open our own beautiful store right next door to Saks.
Precisely. When you control the entire chain, you control the price, you control the environment, you control the client experience, you control the exclusivity.
And the department stores, which operate on that old wholesale model, they just lose their competitive advantage.
They lose their reason for being. They can't control the price, and they no longer have exclusive access to the product.
Yeah.
As Gutierrez points out in his report, and quoting here, the creditor list is a warning for every brand that relies on wholesale.
Wow. So if you're a smaller brand that still relies on department stores to sell your goods, you're essentially financing their debt with your inventory.
That's exactly what you're doing. You ship them goods on terms, and you're praying they can sell them and eventually pay you back. It's a risk most big brands are no longer willing to take.
And consumers feel this shift too. It's not just a business-to-business thing. We have some fascinating data from both Insights, that's Business of Fashion, that shows what luxury customers actually want from a physical store today.
And it's not just about transactions.
Not at all. 34% of luxury customers say they are seeking happiness in a store, and 32% are seeking relaxation.
Happiness and relaxation. Those are purely emotional metrics. They have nothing to do with price or inventory. They're all about feeling. But here is the massive gap, the disconnect. You cannot provide happiness or inspiration, which requires high-touch service, beautiful environments, fully stocked shelves, when you are actively stripping the assets from the business to pay down debt. You cannot offer relaxation when your sales staff is stressed out of their minds about their jobs and the shelves are half empty. The financial reality of the Baker algorithm made the necessary retail evolution, that experiential pivot, completely impossible.
So that is the grim reality. A broken model, a bankrupt giant, and a new CEO, Geoffroy, who is left holding the bag.
Very expensive empty bag.
Exactly. But this is the deep dive. We don't just sit here and say, wow, that's bad. We want to try and fix it.
That's right. So we're going to shift gears now. I want you to imagine we're walking into the boardroom with Geoffroy van Raemdonck right now.
Yeah.
Just us and Geoffroy.
Okay. Geoffroy, pull up a chair. We have some ideas. We have a plan.
We're going to present a strategic open letter, a practical strategy and implementation plan for 2026 and beyond. The goal here is to successfully implement and sustain a real transformation. And we need to look at this from 4 distinct perspectives.
All right, let's start with perspective number 1, an analysis of the external and internal environment. What's happening outside the walls that Geoffroy absolutely needs to understand right now?
Externally, the consumer has fundamentally changed. We're looking at a generation of cautious sharers. That's Gen Z and Gen Alpha. They think differently about ownership and value. But even more importantly, we're seeing the rise of what's being called agentic AI commerce.
Agentic AI. That sounds like something out of science fiction.
Right.
What does this mean for selling a handbag or a pair of shoes?
It means we are moving, and moving quickly, to a world where AI agents, our personal digital assistants, will be doing the shopping for us. The potential value of this shift is estimated at $3 to $5 trillion.
Trillion.
These are AI systems that can negotiate prices, compare styles across platforms, and purchase on our behalf based on our preferences.
So my AI assistant will say, you need a new black dress for the gala on Friday, and it just goes out and finds the best possible option from the entire internet.
That's exactly the idea. And for Saks to survive, they need a strategy that embraces this. Their inventory needs to be flawlessly digitized and readable by these agents. But, and this is the crucial part, they have to balance that high-tech back end with an intensely human, high-touch front end for when the customer actually walks into the physical store.
Right. You have to be high-tech where it's efficient and high-touch where it adds value.
Perfect way to put it.
Right.
But internally, they have a massive problem. The environment inside Saks Global right now must be just toxic.
Yeah.
We read about the fear factor in the source material from Dr. Edward Hallowell.
The concept of overloaded circuits.
Yes. This is a critical concept for any leader in a turnaround situation. When an organization is in bankruptcy, when people are watching their colleagues get laid off, fear just takes over the entire culture.
It's a biological response.
It is. Hallowell explains that this kind of intense, prolonged fear shifts the human brain into survival mode. It literally shuts down the prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain responsible for creativity and complex problem solving.
So your employees can't be innovative if they're terrified.
They physically can't. They're just trying not to get shot. Their brains are in fight or flight mode. They can't engage in fluid learning or collaborative problem solving.
So the very first piece of advice to Geoffroy is, you must find a way to reduce the fear inside the organization.
It has to be job number one. You have to unlock the frontal lobes of your workforce. You cannot threaten your way to a successful turnaround. You have to create psychological safety even in the midst of a bankruptcy.
That's a huge challenge, but it leads perfectly into our second perspective, the STAR model application. This is all about organizational design.
Right. And the big mistake would be to just crudely mash the old Saks culture and the old Neiman Marcus culture together and hope it works.
That's a recipe for a corporate civil war.
It's a disaster waiting to happen. So using the STAR model, we first have to look at processes, specifically the completely broken vendor payment process.
This is where we need to establish what the author Jim Collins calls catalytic mechanisms.
I love this concept. It's so powerful.
It sounds very industrial, catalytic mechanisms. Break that down for us. What is it?
A catalytic mechanism is a policy or a system that makes the painful but necessary changes happen automatically. It's a way to force good behavior by building it into the process. It removes the bureaucratic wiggle room and the need for constant managerial oversight.
Okay, so instead of a memo from the C-suite that says, we will try our best to pay vendors on time from now on, what does a real catalytic mechanism look like in this situation?
It looks like an automatic system-enforced vendor payment guarantee. For example, you tell Chanel, our new policy is payment within 30 days. If our system does not process your payment within 30 days, it automatically adds a 10% penalty fee payable to you. No questions asked.
Wow, that puts some real skin in the game. That has teeth.
It forces the internal accounting and cash flow management processes to get their act together because the cost of failure is immediate, painful, and automatic. And it begins to rebuild trust with LVMH and Kering instantly because you're putting your money where your mouth is.
That's bold. I love it. Okay, what about the people and rewards side of the STAR model? The workforce has been decimated. How do you rebuild?
You have to move beyond just financial incentives. A bonus isn't going to fix a culture of fear. We should look at models like the one used at Land's End.
Okay.
They measure employee performance on 4 balanced metrics: service, quality, quantity, and reliability. It's a holistic, human-centered approach.
Or the waste management model that was mentioned in the sources.
Yes. I'm so glad you brought that up. It's such a great example. They invested heavily in employee education and upskilling.
Wait, waste management, the garbage company.
The garbage company.
Sure.
Their leadership realized that by helping their frontline employees pay for college or get technical degrees, they created massive loyalty and a much more engaged, skilled workforce.
So if a garbage company can figure out that investing in their people is good for business,
Then a luxury retailer has no excuse. Saks needs to show its remaining shell-shocked employees that it is investing in them as human beings, not just extracting value from them until the doors close.
That is such a powerful lesson. Okay, so we've addressed the environment and the organization's design. Let's move to perspective number 3, the balanced scorecard.
Right. Traditionally, in a bankruptcy, everyone is obsessed with one thing: the financials, cash flow, EBITDA, debt service.
And obviously, managing that $1.75 billion in liquidity is job number 1. If you run out of cash, the game is over, period.
Of course. But if that is the only thing you measure, you will absolutely fail as a retailer in the long run. We need to balance the scorecard. We have to measure the customer perspective.
This goes back to that BOF data you mentioned about customers seeking happiness and relaxation.
Exactly. You have to measure emotions, not just transactions. Are customers leaving your store feeling a sense of indulgence, or are they leaving with a feeling of frustration?
How do you even begin to measure an emotion like that?
You use sentiment analysis on social media. You implement real-time feedback loops at the point of sale. You actually ask them. You look at return rates as a proxy for dissatisfaction. You measure how long they dwell in the store. You measure the quality of the human interaction, not just the size of the receipt.
I love that. And for the internal process quadrant of the scorecard, I'd argue we need to create something called a vendor trust index.
That is brilliant. A vendor trust index. Let's make it real.
Yeah.
We should formally survey the CFOs at LVMH and Keurig and Chanel every single month.
And ask them what?
On a scale of 1 to 10, how confident are you that Saks Global will pay you on time and in full this quarter? If that score starts to drop, we know our supply chain is about to break again. We have to treat our vendors like critical partners, not like banks we can borrow from by simply not paying our bills.
And finally, the last quadrant, learning and growth for the employees.
Yeah. Can the sales associates on the floor explain the why behind a $3,000 handbag? Do they know the story of the artisan who made it, or are they just transaction processors?
You have to measure their product knowledge, their engagement, their morale, because if the staff doesn't believe in the product and the vision, the customer never will.
Never.
Which brings us to the final piece of this strategic puzzle. Perspective number 4, human-centered design and building feedback loops.
This is where we really critique that ivory tower approach to leadership. We heard all those stories about Richard Baker commuting to the office on his yacht, completely isolated from the day-to-day reality of the store floor.
Leadership from a yacht, that sends a very clear message to the employees.
It sends a terrible message. Leadership cannot be detached from the work. So we need to implement what's known as the 4 principles of open space meetings.
I have those principles right here. They're
Excellent.
fascinating. Whoever comes are the right people.
Right. No hierarchy.
Whatever happens is the only thing that could have.
You embrace the outcome.
Whenever it starts is the right time. And when it is over, it is over.
These principles, which come from a methodology called open space technology, are designed to encourage organic, brutally honest feedback from the ground up. Geoffroy needs to be holding these kinds of forums with square-level employees.
Not those scripted all-hands town halls where everyone is terrified to ask a real question.
No, real open spaces, where the people who actually talk to customers every single day can stand up and say, here's what is broken, here's why our point-of-sale system makes customers angry, here's why the dressing rooms are a disaster. You have to listen to the front lines.
It reminds me of that Ben and Jerry's approach to team development that was in the source materials, the idea of building a shared purpose.
Exactly. Ben & Jerry's isn't just about selling ice cream. It's about a mission, a set of values. Saks needs to rediscover its mission. Why does it exist in 2026? And at the heart of that mission, we have to remember, the human is premium.
The human is premium. I like that. Say more about that.
In an era of agentic AI, click-and-go shopping, and ruthless digital efficiency, the only sustainable luxury differentiator left is authentic human connection.
There was that great little anecdote in the notes about a handwritten note from Marcus Wainwright, the founder of Rag & Bone.
Yes, an employee mentioned receiving a handwritten thank you note and a small gift from him every single year. That kind of personal touch creates a level of loyalty and advocacy that money simply cannot buy.
And that's what Saks used to be famous for, the personal shopper who knew your kids' names and your anniversary, the handwritten note that came with your purchase.
Saks must become the antidote to cold transactional efficiency. If I can buy the same bag on the brand's website with one click, why would I ever go to Saks?
You go for the human.
You go for the human who knows your style, who makes you feel seen, who brings you that feeling of happiness and relaxation.
So let's just recap this open letter to Geoffroy, our 4 key recommendations.
Let's do it.
1, Reduce the fear in the organization to unlock the creative potential of your people.
2. Implement catalytic mechanisms, like automatic payment penalties, to fix broken processes and rebuild trust with your vendors.
3. Use a balanced scorecard. Measure customer emotions and vendor trust, not just cash in the bank.
And 4. Get leadership out of the ivory tower and into open, honest dialogue with the front lines. The answers are in your stores, not on your yacht.
It's a strategy that really requires a huge amount of humility.
It does. It requires admitting that the real estate first playbook completely failed the retail first mission.
Which brings us to our conclusion. We've covered the bankruptcy, the key players, the failed algorithms, and hopefully a potential path forward. But I want to leave our listeners with one final provocative thought.
It's the question that really haunts this entire story, I think.
Can a company that is owned and controlled by financial engineers ever truly be a merchant at its heart?
That's the fundamental tension, isn't it? The clash of cultures. Geoffroy has the capital now, that $1.75 billion. It buys you time. But does he have enough time to fundamentally change the culture before the real estate is sold out from under him by the very people who now control the company?
That is the race he's in. It's a race between the debt covenants and the customer experience.
And if this fails, if Saks Global cannot turn this ship around, it isn't just another retail bankruptcy.
Right.
It is very likely the final chapter of the great American multi-brand luxury department store. We are literally watching history unfold, for better or for worse.
It's a sobering thought, but also a completely fascinating one to watch. We will be tracking Geoffroy's progress very closely.
Indeed, we will.
Thank you for listening to the Luxury Retail Market Podcast. For deeper research, independent analysis, and long-form insights on the luxury retail industry, visit luxuryretailmarket.org. Subscribe to the show and consider supporting our mission of advancing the future of luxury retail through education, research, and collaboration. Until next time, stay curious, stay informed.